What was your creepy unexplained experience as a child? When I was a child, my grandparents' house always creeped me out. I was terrified of the basement. And there was something off about the rest of the house. Once when I was 10, my mom and I were sleeping in my grandpa's bed. I couldn't sleep and I was facing the middle of the bed, so the back of my head was near the space between the bed and the wall/window. All of a sudden, I feel something poke the back of my head twice. I was petrified and froze, so I never turned my head to see what was poking me. To this day I don't know what could have happened, but I can still feel those pokes. My grandparents' mom's side house was creepy because of how it was built. There were plain brick walls inside. And the halls were super narrow. As were the doorways. I used to have a recurring nightmare where I was slowly walking down the stairs to the basement. And as soon as I hit the concrete floor, I'd jump awake in typical "I just died" in my nightmare fashion. I have no clue what it was supposed to mean. The house was torn down a few years ago. But the basement is still under the dirt somewhere. It was late-ish at night and I heard a car crash outside my house. For some reason I had a gut feeling of who it was and told my parents. And I was right. It was a friend of the family that I had only met once years and years ago. And did not even live close to us. I have no idea if it was something more than being just the hugest coincidence guess in the world. Were they okay? Yes. They just went to live on a farm. From 5 to 6 years old, I would see a shadow figure, perfect human woman shape, walk the walls in the night. Back and forth. It really creeped me out that I would just put the covers over my head. I was an only child and my parents were in their bedroom. It was when I was still wide awake, way before I got sleepy. So creepy. My mum put me to bed in my room, but I woke up downstairs. I thought it was a dream, but some man picked me up when I was almost asleep, carried me downstairs and put me down on some blankets between a sofa and chair. I was quite young, so my parents still had a safety gate. My dad wasn't in work nights then and my mum was asleep, so no one knows how I managed to get downstairs. I can still remember this now. Strangely. Similar story here. I remember one night my parents tucking me into bed and I remember falling asleep. I even remember waking up from a dream laughing that night. It was a good dream. But some point after that I woke up in my backyard laying in my shed. The creepy thing is we had an alarm system that would make a loud ring whenever a door opened in my house. I never heard it go off and neither did my parents or siblings. It was impossible for me to get out of the house that night without waking up my entire family. My family was quite shaken by this and it scares me till this day. Haven't told this one in a while. I was young. 5 to 7. Somewhere in there. I was sleeping in between my parents for whatever reason. I woke up. I remember the clock reading around 4 a.m. There was something standing by the window, looking out into the front yard. It looked like a man in a brown wool robe, about 6 feet 4 inches or so. I started to stir and sat up in bed. And the thing turned and looked at me. Dear God! That face! Extremely pale white skin. Lots of really pronounced wrinkles. And the face drooped like it was melding down into a really pointy chin. Almost similar to a scream mask, but with all of the features of a living being. Its mouth was hanging open and its eyes were wide. Almost like it was worried or frightened. It kept its gaze on me while it moved away from the window, in front of the bed, and out the open bedroom door. The second it exited the room, the lights turned on their own and both of my parents jumped up on either side of me, breathing heavily like they'd both just woken up from a nightmare. To be clear, I was fully able to move during this. I don't think it was sleep paralysis. but I'm not sure what it could have been other than some kind of demon or really peeping ugly ghost. I've never seen it since, but I can still picture it clear as day. Damn, now I'm too scared to continue in reading this thread. I was out at our cabin in the remote mountainous wilderness of Colorado with my dad, and had to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. This necessitated a flashlight and shoes, because the outhouse was far away. There was no one but me and my dad for miles in any direction. So I thought. I suddenly heard voices in the distance and stopped in my tracks. It seemed to be coming from my right, deep in the woods in the middle of nowhere, a quarter of a mile from the road. Being 11 and unafraid of the world, I foolishly yelled, "Who's out there?" There was silence for a few seconds. Then a shouted string of profanity so vulgar it terrified my virgin ears. I stood stock still for a moment like a terrified rabbit, but heard nothing else. So I ran back to the house and woke my dad up. He got up, loaded his gun, and turned all the lights on. But we never heard another sound. To this day, we have not seen or heard another person within 15 miles of the cabin. Edit. Typo. I bought a few small things from an estate sale once when I was 9 or so, and I swear I would find them rotated slightly 30 to 45 every now and again. I grew up on the central coast of California, and my family would frequently visit Big Sur for camping, hiking, or just hanging out and having lunch at one of the restaurants. I must have been about 7, old enough to visit the bathroom independently, but still rather new to the freedom of walking around somewhere that wasn't my neighborhood or the woods alone. I went into the bathroom at a restaurant called the River Inn, and there were 3 stalls, 1 handicapped, and 2 regular. All but one of the stalls, a regular one, were taken. I distinctly remember looking under the doors for feet, because I was a little kid, and for whatever reason preferred the handicapped stall. I saw no feet, but the doors were locked. Whatever. I went into the one open stall. There was a huge peep-ing squid in the toilet. Like, the body had to be at least a foot long, plus tentacles, coiled around the inside of the toilet bowl. It totally filled the available space. Cloudy dead squid eyes, gazing up at me from the pooper. I ran out of the bathroom in horror, told nobody, and held my pee for the 45-minute drive home. What the f*** was that squid doing there? All I can surmise is it was a line cook prank, in an area that ubiquitously has squid on the menu. 25 years later, that terror toilet squid still haunts me. Someone left a voicemail on my home phone saying, "Bad things happen," my mother's first name, but it's okay. That was the whole message. This was right around the time of my parents' divorce and scared the speep out of my siblings and I. I'm guessing it was a friend of my mom calling to comfort her and just did it awkwardly. Scary speep to a 6-year-old. I was young. Maybe 8. Just so you know, I always go to sleep in my bed and I'd never, ever fall asleep on the couch. My grandpa died and we got back from his funeral. That night I went to bed in my room as usual, but I woke up in the middle of the night on the living room couch. When I looked up, I saw my grandpa's ghost. It wasn't scary or anything. At the time it felt natural. He didn't say anything, but there was this understanding between us. I went back to my room and went back to sleep. I would have assumed it was a dream, but it was so vivid and real that it stuck with me for years, especially since I woke up on the couch, which made the moment stick out even more in my mind. It wasn't even a "I saw a ghost" moment. It was just a weird vivid memory that seemed so normal at the time that I didn't think anything strange of it. When I was about 20 I told my mom that story and she said, "Was it the day of his funeral? Because I saw his ghost that night too." That beeped my speep up. Edit. Typos. About 6 years old at the time, and we were at an old cemetery where my mom was trying to find an old grave of a relative. She couldn't remember where the gravestone was and was standing still on looking around. While she was standing there, I suddenly felt compelled to run off in a certain direction. I kept running among the headstones until the feeling to stop came over me. I came to a stop in front of a headstone and looked at it to find that it was the headstone